Okay, so yes, hi. I'm going to talk about app branding 101, how to build an app that people will love. So yes, my name is Lisa. I'm the Director of Marketing at Clue. I'll talk a little bit about, in detail, what Clue is, but suffice to say, Clue is an app. We're based in Berlin. And the reason I wanted to talk about building a brand for an app is because when I looked at the other speakers who were here and the companies that were presenting, I didn't see any apps. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there are some, but I thought that was interesting because it's one thing to build out an app after you've already got a big brand, or it's one thing maybe easier to build a brand if you've got like a website-based service, but for an app, I think it brings some special challenges. So that's what I wanted to talk about, because that's what I've done at Clue over the last 4 years. So just a bit about me for my background. I've done a lot of stuff all in communications and marketing, basically. I started out as a sports journalist in New York. I covered the Yankees for a couple years. And then I left that and went to work at a PR agency doing social media strategy in Seattle. And then after that, I worked at a startup incubator in Vancouver, Canada, doing marketing strategy for different startups. So all different things in communications. And then 4 years ago, I moved to Berlin. I am American, as you can probably tell, but I moved to Berlin to work at a startup called Clue. And I was the first marketing employee there, and went from doing community management and building up the brand and building up the communications to now I lead brand PR, video events, content strategy, product marketing, anything to do with brand and the app and the company I'm in charge of now. All right, so I'm going to talk about today first, apps in the App Store. You all use apps probably. I'm curious to know how much you know about like apps and app branding and app marketing, but I'll give kind of a groundwork for that first. Then I'll talk about Clue specifically and sort of what we are and what we do. I'll talk about how we built our brand at Clue over time and how it's evolved from the beginning. And then finally, I'll talk specifically about App Store optimization and how you can test your brand and build your brand through App Store tools. Cool. All right, so App Store right now. I don't know, how many apps do you have on your phone? A dozen, several dozen, 100? I mean, that's a lot, but there's even more than that in the App Store. So there's millions of apps in the App Store, literally. How many million? There are over 2 million each. So Android, as of March, had 2.8 million, and iOS had 2.2. So that's a lot of competition out there. In addition to that, on average, 80% of users delete or stop using an app within the first 3 months. And probably all of you have done this. I know I've done this. I download an app, I use it maybe one time, and then like never again, or it just sits unused on my phone forever. So not only is there a lot of competition with like just what is out there, but even when you get someone to download your app, it doesn't mean that you've like hooked them as a customer forever. The attrition rate is super, super high. So you really have to think about like how do you keep people coming back? And there's a lot you can do, of course, with like retention in an app and that kind of thing. But part of that, I believe, is having a strong brand that people can relate to. This is just, you know, a look at a lot of the apps that are in the App Store in our category, and you can see how hard it is to stand out. I mean, if you just scroll through the App Store, scroll through the most popular apps, the top apps for any category, it's truly overwhelming. And even if you get it narrowed down and like they search for a term and they found a few apps they're looking at, what's the difference? Like, how can you decide between these 3 apps what makes one better than the other? How do you stand out? And research has shown people decide if they're going to download an app in less than 5 seconds. So you have like no time to grab their attention. Here's how I stand out from the other apps you search for with this keyword. It's a very challenging thing to do, right? Setting up the problem, it's hard. Oh, I know what the problem is. They don't have my fonts. Shit. Oh well. We'll just power forward. So, okay, so how do you build brand affinity when you have such a limited attention span, right? How can you get people to connect with your brand in like 5 seconds? And beyond that, how do you build an entire brand based off of just an app? So we didn't want to be just a utility. We didn't want to be just like, oh, it's my map app, whatever. I don't care about the brand. I don't care what they're about. I just wanted to do something for me. We wanted to go beyond that. We didn't want to be just an app that did something for you. We want to be broader than that. Okay, so I've talked a lot about what we do. This is what Clue is. So Clue is a female health app. It's an app to track your period, to know when your period's coming, know when you can get pregnant or not, know when your PMS is coming. In addition to that, which is pretty cool, is you can track all these different other aspects of your health that relate to your cycle, or your cycle can impact them. So that means like hair, skin, emotions, sleep, alcohol use. All of these things have been shown scientifically to be related to the menstrual cycle. So you can track all of those things in Clue. You can also share your cycle with a partner or with your friends if you want to. So Clue has been downloaded more than 20 million times around the world. We're in 15 languages at 190 countries. We're a team of about 50 people based in Berlin, Germany. And yeah, I said we've been around for about 4 years. We're on iPhone, Android, and Apple Watch. But we want to be more than just an app, right? We want to give female health insights to people around the world. That's our broader vision. We think that's where we can really make an impact, because this is something that affects 50% of the population, right? Female health, it matters. It matters to you, and it matters to you if you don't have a period, because you're probably going to be interacting with someone who does. Either that or you're going to have kids someday. So we really believe that there's a lot of value in providing insights about this type of health to everyone. All right, so how did we build our brand to what it is today? So I've shown you the screen a few times of all these different apps, and something you might have noticed is they tend to be really, really pink. And that is a problem, or at least a tendency in the female health space, in the period tracking app space. It's that a lot, especially when 5 years ago when the App Store was like really spinning up, there were period tracking apps around before Clue launched, but they all tended to be really pink because they were made by like big app companies that cranked out a ton of apps, and it was probably designed by some dude who was like, oh yeah, girls like pink, let's make it pink. Pink it and shrink it, right? And our founder is a woman named Ida, and she was like, why would it be pink? I don't want any of my stuff to be pink. I don't like pink that much. It should just be like a nice tool like my calendar app or my mapping app. So that was really important. This thing says it's going to turn off. Okay, well, we'll see. So you wouldn't think, like, at the beginning that just looking different would be enough, but it really was. And we heard constantly from people, oh my God, thank you for being not pink. And we use that in our marketing a lot. We were like, the period tracker app that's not pink, that doesn't have butterflies, that doesn't use euphemisms, that doesn't say Aunt Flo. You call things what they are. This really was a unique point of difference for us in this space. It was like a gap in the market that we saw when we looked at all of these other apps out there. Like, we could just really stand out by not relying on this sort of traditional girly color scheme. At the same time, we knew it wouldn't work forever because it wasn't defensible. So once we started to get traction and people started to see it worked, the way that our competitors could catch up would they just be also not pink, right? You can change the colors pretty easily. So we knew this wouldn't work forever. Could someone turn the screen back on so I can see what I'm talking about? Anyway, so this is what our marketing looked like at the time. So we talked about it being confident, scientific, and not pink. Pretty straightforward, clearly not pink at all. And this worked for a while. It's okay. I'll just kind of come up here. So then we had to evolve from that, right? Because I said that not pink was not really defensible. So we were like, okay, what is more defensible position than just the visual look of it? So being really scientific, that was something that we thought, okay, we can stand on this. And the reason we went with really scientific was because we heard from users all the time that, like, oh, I love that you're so based in science and you're explaining things to me in a way I never got before. I never got this in sex ed. I never got this from my parents. The scientific information, you're telling me, oh, this is how the menstrual cycle works. This is what ovulation means. Thank you. We were able to provide the most reliable medical information possible. So there are over 100 pages of scientifically researched content within the app with references, right? It's super reliable. And that we knew was like a lot harder for someone to copy. Like, yes, you could. Yes, you could also go and work with doctors and researchers and put all this medical information in the app, in your app. But it's a lot more work than just, oh, my designer will reskin it. So we felt a lot more stable doing that. And then this was what the branding evolved to. So we still talked about the beautiful look of it, and people said, oh, it's so beautiful. But it was more like it's scientific as well. Still pretty straightforward. Red's important. But one thing that was really nice about shifting to more of a science focus was that it allowed us to go from like just being an app into a content marketing that made a lot more sense for us. Before the content was sort of like, yeah, you could talk about periods, you could talk about women's health sort of generally, but when you're based in science, you can do really, really helpful specific content. So like on the blog, we also had a Medium page. We have a Medium page where we can do scientific articles written in a way that people can understand, where it's like, okay, what is PMS actually? What does it mean if you spot during ovulation? And then we have the scientific research at the bottom, the references, but it's also explained in a way that people can understand. And then we started distributing this through a newsletter on a monthly basis, and now we do it twice a month. So it wasn't just like I go and I use this app one time and that's the only time I encounter it, but now you're getting this information that's supplementing it, that's helping you understand better, delivered to your inbox. And then also we started to produce it on social media as well. So you go on Instagram and you say, oh, okay, now I'm learning this other thing about my cycle that I didn't know. Or on Facebook, I'm seeing an interesting article that this company shared. So again, keep going from being just this thing, I go and I track my period once a month and that's it. Instead, I'm starting to encounter the brand in a lot more ways. So here's what this looks like. So on the left side, you see like what it looks like on the blog if you're reading it on your phone, and then also on Instagram. And so this was a piece we did about how strength training is related to your cycle. And we had someone who's an actual, someone on our team who's a CrossFitter and a weightlifter talk about like when in her cycle she does strength training, because it actually depends where you are. Your muscles can feel different and that sort of thing. And so we were able to go, again, beyond just like periods, to like, this impacts my life, this impacts something else that I do, this is relevant to me in a lot of ways. This is what our Instagram page started to look like. So you can start to see more illustrations, kind of a really defined brand. We also started to do videos. We started to do photos more and more. And then we started to include this section in our newsletter called Clued In, where it was, once we had this basis of science, right, and it was like, okay, they're trustworthy, they're talking about science, we can trust them on this topic, then we were able to comment on, hey, here's this latest research that came out. You probably saw a headline. We're going to explain to you what it actually means and whether that headline was true or not. So it allowed us to, again, comment on a larger thing and be able to address things that were not just about this one time in the month. And we knew this was working because we started to hear this kind of feedback from people all the time. People would say, yeah, thank you for creating this app, it's really helping my life, but also I'm learning from it. I'm learning things I'm not getting anywhere else. I love the newsletters you send me. I mean, how often do people say, I love your email marketing? We hear this all the time. All right, so went from not pink, we went to scientific, but we didn't stop there, because that also, like I said, it wasn't super defensible ultimately, and we wanted to go beyond that. Our bigger vision is being the trusted brand for female health, because that does not exist right now. There's like we saw a gap in the market for not pink, there is no trusted female health brand, and that's what we believe we can be. And yeah, we're just an app right now, but like that is where we want to get to. So some of the ways that we are starting to build that trust, one is with we were rated the #1 most reliable period tracker by an objective council of doctors and gynecologists. And that is really helpful because it shows people that, like, objectively speaking, you are rated the most accurate, right? It's not just us saying that, it's like outside sources. We also started to partner, we wanted it to be about more than just periods, right? We wanted it to be like the entire female health, sexual health, reproductive health. So we partnered with the Kinsey Institute in the United States. They're a big institute that does research on sex and sexuality. And we partnered with them for a major survey of over 140,000 people on how technology is affecting your sex life and how do you sext, and does having a mobile phone change the way you think about sex? And that was something that, again, it showed we were broader than just this one topic, and we were also partnering with really legitimate outside people. We also were able to do content that was around, like, these are women's issues you should care about, right? Because if you really do care about female health, you need to understand that female health is related to, you know, workplace equality and parental leave and all of these different other issues. So going beyond just this one thing and think about actually how does it tie into a larger conversation. Another thing that is very important, because we are based in Germany especially, is data and data privacy. And so we really had to, being an app that takes care of your health, and especially female health, we have to have a stance on data. We have to have a stance on privacy. People ask us about it all the time, and they want to know, like, okay, if I'm tracking in your app when I'm having sex, is someone going to find that out? So we wanted to talk about, like, yes, data is important to us because we believe that by collecting these large quantities of data, we can do a lot of good in the world. We can contribute to female health research. But also we want to, we want you to trust us. We want you to know that we're going to do the right thing with your data. We're not going to use it to, like, exploit you. So that was something that has been really important for us as we're building a brand of trust. That's why we changed our terms of service and privacy policy, and we told everyone about it, and we explained it in plain language, and we made a really big deal about it, to the point that people were like, we don't care, it's fine. But it was so important for us. And the reason that all of this data is so important is because female health is such an under-researched field. So the most recent, before now, the biggest studies on menstrual cycle research were with a couple of thousand people over a few years. And we have literally millions of menstrual cycles being tracked in our app all the time. There's this vast opportunity for data, right? So what we wanted to communicate to people is, like, you can trust us with your anonymous data because we're doing a really good job with it. We want this to do something that will benefit you, will make the app better, that will make the world better. So just a quick summary again of what did we do on our branding over time. We went from not pink to scientific to trust. And that was something that we kept doing because we kept having to stay ahead of the market. And we think, again, that being the trusted brand for female health is something that the rest of the field cannot catch up with. However, it is important to say that those sort of big branding visions for the company do not work on every channel or on every platform. So like this is, the left is the Instagram, and on the right is I believe that's a Facebook ad. Yeah. And when my growth team came to me and showed me these, I was like, oh my God, this one on the right, it's so ugly, it's so not on brand. And they were like, oh, but it's performing so well. And I was like, okay. So it really, like, not pink still works in some contexts, as well as, like, know when your period is coming. Just the basic use case. You still need to do that kind of basic initial stuff to get people in the door. And then once they understand, okay, I've got this app, I'm using it, then you can open up the conversation to, like, and we're also about female health insights and building this larger company that you can trust with your data. So the basic use case is still really important. All right, so what I want to talk about now is App Store optimization. How many people know App Store optimization? Raise your hand. Oh, only a couple. Great. I love it. This is one of my favorite topics. So App Store optimization, right? It's kind of like SEO, like search engine optimization, but it's specific to the App Store. So the way I want you to think about it is if you walk into a mall and the mall is the App Store, the first floor of the mall is like the ground floor of the mall is like the first page of apps in the App Store. So you walk in and it's like just what you see, you're probably more likely to go in there because it's just right there, right? So that's why being on the first page of the App Store matters a lot. But it's not enough to just like be on the first page. You have to look really nice. You have to have a really nice storefront. Because if you walk in to the mall and yeah, they're on the first floor, but their store is not very nice, it's not very appealing, you're not gonna go in, right? So that's why it's important both to be on the first page and also look really good and look really compelling so people will want to walk in or download, or at least look at you, right? I could talk a lot about App Store optimization. I'm happy to talk about it afterwards if you want, about like the right keywords to go after and all that stuff. But specifically what I want to talk about now is the branding side of things and how you can use the App Store to test your branding. So first of all, you can think of a brand positioning you want to test, right, in the App Store, because you have all this real estate. You have these screenshots you can use. So you can think of it, okay, we want to test this new brand positioning. Let's say for us it was, I don't know, originally not pink. You could test that. Alternatively, you could say, I want to do some brand messaging that appeals to a certain specific segment. So let's say we wanted to say we want to target people who are trying to get pregnant. We could make our App Store marketing really, really targeted to them to get that kind of download for a while. On the other hand, you could also validate your current brand positioning. So we can be like, yes, we're going after trust. Trust is really important. We're going to see what messages really convey trust and how do those work to get people in the door. So you can stress test that on specific markets, like we really want to make a push in Canada, or you can say we're going into a completely new market. We want to see if this works in Brazil. You can also do it to make sure you're still relevant. So if you have something that's been working for a while and maybe you're seeing a drop-off in downloads or conversion, then you can do a little more effort to say, what if we tweak the messaging and we're doing the same positioning, but we change it a little bit? Will it perform better? We could have tested a lot of different areas, and we wanted to pick trust for this example I'm going to show you. But we could have tested, diversity, education, all of these different things. All right, so I'm going to show you 3 examples of things that we test, and I'm going to have you vote on which one you think performed best. All right, so this is the first one. We said trusted. We just was straight up trusted by millions of women around the world. Right? Just calling it like it is. Want to be trusted. Second one was we're the #1 period tracker recommended by doctors. I showed you the Facebook ad that worked really well for that. So we're like, OK, #1, trusted by doctors, and it's white instead of red. And then the third one was the official research partnerships with Oxford, Stanford, and Columbia. So does it, having that affiliation with big research institutions, does that help? Who thinks it was 1? Who thinks it was 2? Thinks it was 3? It's kind of a mix. Wow. So it was 3. It's this one. It's the green one. And this one performed in the US 8% better in the US, 11% better in the UK, and 15% better in Canada. So it's like a serious impact. And when I say perform better, it means the conversion was better of people who saw this. They were more likely to download than the control group, which was just basically just screenshots with no illustrations, no additional messaging. And the first 2 actually had it performed worse than the just screenshots. So they actually had less downloads, which is interesting. So basically, to take home my key lessons here about building a brand for your app, I think you have to think about your brand top to bottom from day 1. So it wasn't like we scaled up this app, we got tons and tons of millions of downloads, and then we were like, oh yeah, we should figure out our brand. It was always part of it from the beginning. The voice and tone was super consistent from the beginning. That involved making a lot of choices about how we sounded and how we didn't sound and what we looked like and what language we used. And we did that across the board, and we were consistent about that everywhere we were. So that meant that once we scaled up to being more than just an app, we had to make sure that brand was really, really consistent throughout. Like I said, be different. What is in the market? If every other app out there is pink, then not being pink is a good way to start. There is still, yes, the App Store has millions of apps, but if you're in a space, there is stuff you can be doing that is unique and different. And maybe it is just showing more care in your brand and design than what the App Factory is cranking out. And once you know how you're different, you should really double down on that and know what makes you different and really be specific and be we are going to own this space. We're going to own the space of being scientific. We're going to own the space of being trustworthy. And we're going to build up what we do so no one else can come and get that. Thank you very much.
Wow. Big hand, please.